From the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, JP Shadrick with the great Charles Davis. You do it all. NFL on CBS, NFL Media, Sirius XM Radio. You're doing the Combine broadcast. I mean,
yeah,
you got it all.
How lucky am I that people will allow me to do all this type of work? I'm pretty fortunate.
It's
I
awesome.
really am. I know it kind of sounds trite because we're kind of joking back and forth, but you know what it's like in our business. If someone wants you to work, consider yourself fortunate.
Yeah, and then go work.
Yes.
Go do it.
Go do the job.
Might not come back again.
Do the job best you can, and hope they want to keep you around.
You do a fantastic work on all of them. So
Thank you.
we've got plenty to discuss around the Jaguars, of course. New leadership across the board. Three-pronged approach with Tony Boselli as the executive vice president, handling everything outside of picking players. Well, he might be involved in that too, but there's a GM in Gladstone who's 34. Liam Cohen's 39 years old. The youth movement is here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it really is, and I like how you described it with the three-pronged approach, and it certainly sounds like that's how it is set up. And having Tony Boselli back involved, I think it's just a home run for the Jacksonville franchise. And this is something he really wants to do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and when you see that and you hear that, the passion that he's going to bring to this job, because this man loves the Jaguars. He loves the organization. He wants to be part of a group that gets them back to where things were when he was rolling out there. So, yeah, I really like where they're going. I don't know James Gladstone as well as I hope to down the road.
And that's kind of
Liam Cohen. I was able to meet last year as the offense coordinator of the Buccaneers, and I could not have been more impressed. I came away from that one going, whoa! First time I'd ever met him and spent time with him, and I was juiced coming out of there.
It'd be interesting to see. Obviously, he did great work in Tampa with Baker.
Yeah.
That's the idea with Trevor, right? Okay, work this offense around him. There's 6 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
Trevor's not going anywhere.
No, we need to get this thing going.
And that's the number one priority for this team is Trevor.
It certainly is. And typically when you take these jobs, look, Ben Johnson took the Chicago job because Caleb Williams was there. So he knows what his priority is, and Caleb Williams needs to know what his priority is to meet Ben Johnson, not just halfway, but be all in with him. I would say that's the same thing for Trevor Lawrence. And, I don't know Trevor as well as others, right? I know him well enough that he's a very nice young man, and his talent is, there's a reason he went number one in the draft. They didn't just like his hair, okay? He could play. But he also is at that point in his career where he really needs to hit it. Like, he really needs that. Whatever Liam Cohen is bringing, whatever he's going to bring to the table, they need to be successful together for Trevor Lawrence to have the career that we're expecting him to have, because it's still out there for him, but you can't keep waiting for it.
Charles, you mentioned that you don't know James Gladstone. I don't know anybody that knows. It's just tough. That's how some of these guys.
I've heard so many good things, and
they move up these organizations, and you never hear them talk. You don't know who these guys are, and all of a sudden they're a GM.
Yeah, and part of that is the good organizations make sure that they have that one consistent voice. I don't think it's as how would we say it? Like in college, where it's like there is one voice. If I hear one other voice, everybody's there's gonna be hectapads.
Right. It is Nick Saban or else,
or everyone's gonna lose. I don't think it's quite like that, but at the same time, you want a unified organization. You're gonna defer. The good ones will defer to their GM, to their head coach, whoever it is, that sort of a deal. But from everything I understand about him, he's been Les Snead's right hand for ages and has been groomed for this and has absorbed it and been involved in the whole thing and was raised up the ladder. And Les spoke up for him when he thought he was ready, not just, hey, I got a guy. When he thought it was time, he was ready to speak up for him, is what I've been told on this. And let me tell you something. Les Snead and Bleep Those Picks is maybe the most misunderstood chapter we've had in recent NFL history, because he knew what he was doing in the short term, but at the same time he had a long-term strategy. And we've had, one losing season after Bleep Those Picks?
That's right.
And everything else has just been contending or going to the playoffs. Come on, Les Snead knows what he's doing.
They're hitting on all the picks that they did have remaining,
Oh,
too.
yeah, that's
and
right. Yeah, we didn't need them then.
The reason.
But these picks now, they've used them quite well.
Huge. Charles Davis with us from everything. He does everything in the NFL, including the Combine this week. So give us the strongest Combine position group. What are you most excited to see?
I think you probably heard it how many times. You want to say it together? defensive line.
D-line.
Right? That's kind of where it goes. Plenty of offensive linemen. A deep running back group, I believe. Always going to be a bunch of receivers, although maybe not as sexy at the top.
And running backs back in vogue again all
Yeah.
of a sudden. Everybody loves running backs.
Amazingly enough, right? so you have that. Quarterback's not the same as last year, but you have two that people are saying, okay, they're probably going to go high for teams that need quarterbacks, and we're trying to figure out who the third quarterback is, right? Is there that third guy? Well, we'll see. It remains to be seen. Different teams have different flavors. This combine will help do it. On the defensive side of the ball, corners and safeties, good group, but again, not quite as sexy as maybe we've had in the past. Linebackers, good group, but no one talks about linebackers have become running backs on the defensive side of the ball. And then the defensive front and edge rushers. I think much more interior defensive line than the edge guys. Although Abdul Carter might make up for a pretty good number of people by himself.
He's pretty decent.
He's
that
pretty
guy.
good.
Yeah.
He's pretty darn
Could
good.
he go number one?
Yeah, he could go number one depending on how Tennessee values things. Depending on what kind of offer Tennessee might get, someone might come up to go get him as opposed to a quarterback. So there's a lot of that goes along with it. But, yeah, and even if he doesn't go number one, he might be the best player in this draft. You know, him, Travis Hunter,
right.
depending on how you want to look at it. But they would be vying for that. Like, remember when Jalen Carter was the best player in the draft, but got in trouble? But we were here.
Yeah, that's right.
But
that's
it
right.
all came down
Absolutely.
here, and that led to him sliding. I'm doing Joey Tribbiani air quotes, sliding to 9.
And look at him now.
Right?
He's doing just fine.
I think he's doing pretty darn well. He's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, just think he barely comes off the field.
At that size.
I watched him in the divisional against the Rams when the Rams had that last drive that could have changed the whole balance of power. And on third down, he gets a sack, and on fourth down, he affects the throw, and Philadelphia escapes and goes home. Best game that they had in the playoffs, toughest game they had was that game with the Rams.
Love that. Charles, who are the Jaguars picking at number 5?
Ooh, that's a great question. I knew you were going to ask me something like that. That's a really great question.
I know. That's why I asked it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I know you have an answer.
I don't have an answer. I think that for them, obviously I have no idea about where James Gladstone wants to go with this. I have no idea where the organization wants to go. But you're looking at a group that I don't know that there's anywhere you go that you don't have an opportunity to say he's – so the trite answer is best player available. Okay, who's on your board that's the best player available? Who do you go get? But you've got to find a way to get Trevor kick-started. It's got to be someone who can give him something. Do you have a receiver that's so dynamic like a Jamar Chase that you turn down the best offensive tackle?
It's tough.
Do you think Will Campbell is that guy at LSU? People talk about arm length, that maybe they move him inside. Other people said, no, he'll be fine. He'll be like Rashawn Slater. Arm length isn't that great, but, boy, no one's bothering Slater at left tackle. So these are the types of questions that are going to come up.
And we just talked about this with Bucky.
But to me, everything is about Trevor.
Yep.
But I'm also having the conversation, Trevor, you're coming along for this, right? Like you're all in, right? Because I got to have you.
We just talked about with a similar conversation with Bucky earlier. And, okay, maybe there is a receiver there or somebody that can help score points.
Yeah.
But at some point, to build the offensive line like they've talked about, you have to make picks to build the offensive line.
Yeah, talking about it doesn't quite get it done, right?
You know?
In Cincinnati, the thing we have to remember is when Cincinnati decided to go Jamar Chase, Jonah Williams was there on the roster. And they decided that was going to work for us. Who's your left tackle right now? Was it Walker Little?
Yeah.
Okay, so Walker Little's your left tackle right now. Will James Gladstone and group believe he is the left tackle? And if so, maybe you don't have to do that. And I don't know if you're drafting Will Campbell and just automatically making him a guard. Maybe, because he's pretty darn good. Like the Titans took Peter Skoronski at 7 and made him a guard right away. We're not even batting an eye anymore. How much money did the Panthers spend last year on the 2 guards that were free agents?
I don't know.
Robert Hunt and Damian.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But guess what? They feel comfortable with those guys now, and they have those big, strong people in front of their short quarterback, and the short quarterback played pretty well down the stretch. They're hoping to continue to see that growth. But that's the old Sean Payton model. That's how he did it with Drew Brees and those guys in New Orleans to help have success for Drew.
Last thought with you, get you out of here. I know you're busy. You've been busy all day. Gladstone has said it. Liam Cohen said it. This is not a 4-win roster. Do you believe that?
You've seen me around your squad for the last 2-3 years. I am as much surprised as anyone that the last 2 years have gone the way they've gone. I really have no answer for it. I'm not close enough, but I just know that 2 years ago, my broadcast crew, we were with Jacksonville a decent amount because we were expecting, and it didn't happen. And then last year just was.
We didn't see him.
We didn't see you.
That's how it works. Well, you're not playing well.
But I thought last year was a chance for a bounce back year. It just didn't happen. There's talent there, but you know how it goes too. When things start to go south and the losing kicks in, sometimes it's really hard to dig out of it, depending on who your leadership is, how people handle things. Do people believe the coach is going to be around? Because that's a big one. Because once a team believes coach isn't going to be around, good luck with everything.
It's hard to get that back.
And I think I got the vibe that they thought he was gone way earlier than it ever happened. So you weren't getting anything out of him last year. You weren't getting him back last year.
Right. You see the NFLPA rankings? They've said that pretty much in the coaching part of it,
really?
Too. Yeah.
I didn't see the rankings.
It just came out today, I think.
Oh, wow. So hey, those things can be valuable if you go and take a look at them as an organization. But fresh start yet again. Wish everyone luck there because I don't mind coming to see the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's an easy drive for me. Plus, I like the people. I like the organization. It'll be a lot of fun to see them back playing well.
It's always a lot of fun to spend time with you, Charles.
Thank you, sir. Great to see you. Thanks for your patience with me today.
No. Have a great day. I know you're worn out today. You're the star of the show.
Listen, I could be out somewhere breaking rocks.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
You and I are sitting here talking ball. How bad can it be?
And the air conditioning. It's nice.
Right? Because anyone who's watching us, they're like, oh, really? Is that tough? and believe me, folks, we understand. We work in the toy department. We get it.
Charles Davis, NFL on CBS. NFL media, you'll see him on the Combine coverage this week. Sirius XM Radio. And that's it from the Combine at Indy. JP Shadrick with Marc Ross, NFL media analyst. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good to be seen. Good to be back for, 27, 28 of these. I lose track.
It's that many.
Yeah, I think my first one was in 1997. And
a little different times.
Oh, completely different. I mean, it is. Back then, we just come in, get our work done, get out of here. Now it's just all the media and the setups and fans here and all of that, and it's going to keep getting worse, too.
Yeah, and hopefully it stays in Indy. That's always kind of the talk.
Yeah.
Is it going to get sold somewhere else and the highest bidder?
Yeah.
This is the perfect place.
It is. It really is. And, of course, they want to move it, generate more. But for the working people, for everybody, this is the spot.
And there's an argument to be made that the working part of it, the scouting part of it, hey, you could do a lot GPS-wise now, right?
Yeah, this is all the scouting is secondary. This is all a media event now, built around some guys running around on the field.
Let's get your thoughts on the Jaguars organization. Mr. Khan, the Jags owner, has made more changes. Coach and GM are out. And now here's Liam Cohen in from Tampa Bay. Here's James Gladstone, a 34-year-old general manager. And here's Tony Boselli as the Executive Vice President of Football Operations. Over your years in personnel departments and such, I'm sure you've seen a number of different setups. How does this one compare, and why could this be the one that works?
Or
could it be?
It could be the one that works. Well, let's start with that. The youth brings about, and I'm all for youth. I started in the NFL young. I was 23 years old, became a director at 28. So youth, I'm all for that. So this could be new, fresh ideas, guys that have been at winning organizations and working together with the same vision and goal. That's why it could work, because it seems as if, okay, these two young guys know the pressure's on, know how to work together to build consistency. What I think that's really what the Jacksonville is looking for is some sort of consistency, and not every couple years we have change.
That's how it's been, really, for the last 13 years especially, and that's got to stop at some point. What do you like about Liam Cohen as an offensive mind?
Yeah, he did a lot of good stuff with Baker. I mean, when you watch, you can watch certain offenses in the league, and it's quarterback-driven, and it's a lot because of what the quarterback does to make the offense great. But when I watch Tampa, he did a lot of neat stuff and put Baker in positions to succeed, and so just a lot of they were fun. They were fun to watch the stuff he did, and always seemed as if he had an answer to what the defense was doing. So they definitely were every week watching Tampa is like, okay, we're going to see some points and they're going to see something innovative here.
I'm excited to see what the next step is for Trevor Lawrence. I think everybody is. Because he obviously was the number one pick and was one of the highest rated prospects in a long time and has the talent to do a lot of things. Just hasn't been able to live up to that year over year. He was ascending a little bit, and then it's gone away. And now another change on offense. Yeah. But he's under contract for 6 more years. He's going to be a Jaguar, right? He's getting his money.
Yeah.
How do you make the most out of Trevor, and what are your thoughts on the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to when I watch Trevor, it's him. You know, I mean, there's talent around him. He has to just iron out the inconsistencies. I mean, that's going to be the word of the day. Well, not the word of the day, but our discussion here is just the inconsistencies of the Jags organization and the inconsistencies of Trevor Lawrence, where you see the flash. And I think that's one thing that people missed in the draft evaluation process of Trevor. And I was kind of on a boat of my own where I did not think he was this generational prospect, and there were major concerns that I had. And that the concerns are, I've seen them with him there. It's just, you guys seen him spray balls, and you've seen him not see people, and it's that consistency with the vision, the accuracy, the playmaking in crucial situations that he has to get to. And, of course, his playmaking group and the O-line, everybody has to get better with that. But I think the more Liam can get out of Trevor, then everything else will flow from that.
You know, I've also seen a lot of drop passes for his receivers, too.
Throw to Brian Thomas. Stop throwing to other people.
Right. And he didn't really do that this year. That's the other part of this thing. All the balls to Brian Thomas came from Mac Jones at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, right.
So at some point, they've got to get together, and that's a great opportunity for a quarterback to get on track when you have a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. And the way he ascended as the season went on is spectacular.
Yeah, I during the draft process, I had Marvin 1, and then I had Brian and Malik right behind, neck and neck. When I watch LSU tape, it's like you go back and forth, like which one of these guys I like better. So it's not a surprise at all that Brian Thomas, and then just watching him week in and week out, like, man, this guy is fantastic, as you guys see. And then getting him involved more, you know, those jet sweeps you ran. Like, he didn't do that stuff at LSU. That was Malik that did all that stuff. So it even opened up more of his bag of what he could do, and I think there's even more ascension for him and more talent that he's just going to explode.
Jaguars defense was right near the bottom in most every metric last year, and they've made changes there, certainly. And they can make a whole lot more on the personnel side. Like the middle of the defense, the D-line, there was inconsistent linebacker play and the safety play. Yeah. When you're bad up the middle, it's just tough to be a good defense.
There's just a lot of holes there, not just up the middle, but even on the edges and the consistent pressure. And it was just, again, you got to get better players in there. You got to draft better. You got to make better free agent signings, and then from that, it'll grow. You hope it'll be more stable, and you'll get better. And so there is hope. There is hope because that Eagles D, that what they've done and put together over a year. You know, they were struggling last year, and then they put it together and had a fantastic year. So it seems as if their pieces are there for the Jags to make a run, and especially with that division. But it just they have to make the right decisions and have some consistency.
Trayvon Walker had 10 sacks again last year. Where were you originally on that number 1 overall pick, being Trayvon instead of Hutchinson? And what do you like or not like about Trayvon's game so far?
I definitely was on the Hutch train on that one.
A lot of people were.
Yeah, I think maybe the Jags might have been the only ones not. But I think Trayvon's been good, and the numbers kind of may not. I don't watch them and say, he's really up there just wrecking havoc all the time. There's those flashes, and he makes some good plays here and there. But as far as every game we have to account for Trayvon Walker and double him and chip him and all that, I still don't see that. I like the energy. I like the toughness. I like the second effort and all that stuff. But as far as an elite guy, I still don't see that in him.
Yeah, a pure edge pass rusher is not him. Now, I'd hate to have to block him all game because he's a big, tough, physical
big, tough,
guy.
Strong.
Right?
Yeah. You love that. And now just get some other pieces so that he doesn't have to be that guy.
Let's talk about some of these other pieces. The NFL draft coming up. Jaguars have the 5th pick. Do you do mock drafts?
No, I don't. There's 3,000 mock drafts. That's one of the things you talk about, things changing. Back in the day, it was, one mock draft. USA Today had theirs, and then Joe Bushbaum. There was like a couple, and then now it's like, okay, here's more. Now there's, everybody has a mock draft. It's insane how many mock drafts.
You can do a mock draft for 26 draft right now if you want. I don't know how people do that.
I don't.
You picked this one yet.
7-round mock drafts and stuff. It's amazing.
What I was going to ask you then, who are the Jags picking at 5? Or have you really even thought about that?
I don't. The best player. They should pick the best player available. Well, you just have to look at the landscape. Okay, they're not picking a running back. They're not going to pick a receiver because they've got a bunch there. And then okay, do we need O-line? Is an O-lineman that worth that? I don't know. Okay, corners, great group of corners. Need some help there, as you mentioned. Some intriguing D-line type of players. So, whoever falls there with the best value, that's who they should take. The new era here with Jags as far as take a great football player.
Love it. What's the rest of your day look like?
This was my last interview,
I
think. So, this is my last interview, and got a meeting with the network later, and maybe hit happy hour. I don't know.
Might see you there. Maybe not. Who knows? Mark, thanks a lot, man.
For sure. My pleasure.
Marc Ross joining us from NFL Media here at the Combine. From the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, J.P. Shadrick with Mike Tannenbaum, former Jets GM and front office insider for ESPN. Great to see you. How are you?
Good to be with you, JP.
Yeah, busy day for you, busy week here at the NFL Scouting Combine, busy couple months for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yet again, another offseason of change, and really a three-pronged front office now. Head coach, the GM, and EVP of football operations in Baselli. Is that the right way to go about it? I mean, there's different ways to go about it and have winning results, but this is one it feels like that Mr. Khan has not tried yet.
Yeah, actually, ironically, I've been part of two different structures. I was the GM of the Jets. I was executive VP of football operations for the Dolphins, and there's pros and cons to both. I think Tony Baselli will do a great job. These jobs have become much more vast, much more complicated when you think about sports performance, data, things like that, analytics. So there's a lot to the job. The salary cap is now $275 million. Having somebody on top of that all the time, not to say that they had it in the past, but I could see, league-wide, if we're sitting here 3 to 5 years, JP, that more teams would be doing it.
Right. James Gladstone, 34 years of age, director of scouting strategy for the Rams under Les Snead. There for 9 years, kind of worked his way up in that organization. What do you know about James? I mean, because it's not like he's not a household name.
Yeah. To be candid, don't know a lot about him, but, to be with an organization for 9 years and move up, that says a lot about him, obviously coming from an organization that has a lot of success. And more fundamentally, more so than what anybody else thinks, like Liam Cohen had been with him in the trenches. So, obviously, there must be a lot of trust there.
Right. What's the biggest roadblock, something ahead that might trip up a young GM in his first opportunity here?
Yeah, I ran into a young GM this morning, and we had a very similar conversation. I was the assistant GM of the New York Jets for 5 years, and when I became the GM, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I can't even imagine the guys that have to actually go to a new organization. Unless you sit in the seat, it's hard to understand, but 5 things could come up about the West Coast scout doesn't like his title, or, the budget was X, but it's going to be Y, and your best player's, wife is pissed about, not having the right parking spot, and, you have to do a one-on-one with, the in-house media people, and the owner wants to know what's going on today. And, that's before 9 a.m. And you want to come in and watch film and start building your strategy, and, 2 people in your building are leaving unexpectedly, and that's just running an organization.
What's wrong with the in-house media people? Come on, Mike. What are we talking about here? Come on, man. No, of course. Mike Tannenbaum from ESPN. Liam Cohen, I guess it's a pretty good sign when a head coach now, but an assistant before, had been to a college team, went to a pro team, went back to the same college team, same head coach, and then went back to the same pro team again in the Rams. It means that he kind of left things in a right spot if he's leaving an organization and going back twice. What is your understanding of how Cohen goes about his business on a day-to-day basis? Yeah,
well, look, as a UMass guy, I'm a big Liam Cohen fan.
I bet you are.
So, look, I think at the end of the day, you could look at what they did on the offense last year in Tampa. They were tough. They ran the ball. Baker Mayfield got better, and I'm sure, from an ownership perspective, they're saying, hey, Trevor Lawrence has, we could argue, has he been a B, B minus? He hasn't been what everyone thinks and hopes he can be. And I'm sure a lot of the lens of like, hey, look at what Liam Cohen did with Baker Mayfield. Imagine what he could do with Trevor Lawrence.
And a lot of that, though, was injury-induced in Tampa last year. They had to shift to the running game and figure it out. Wide receivers are hurt. How do they adjust? And obviously it worked out well. But on Trevor's part of it, he's been injured a lot, too. He hasn't been on the field. Some of that is his own doing with head-first diving, and you got to coach him a little, to maybe from himself a little bit. A lot of that's the offensive line. There's a lot to be built on the offense here in Jacksonville. Where would you begin if you're crafting it around Trevor, the holes on Jacksonville's offense? Right now?
That's easy. It's up front. My first draft as a GM, we drafted DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, Nick Mangold, and they were foundational players for the next decade. You show me a good offensive line, I'm going to show you a good offense. We could talk about Jalen Hurts and how he was a second-round pick. It all starts up front with them, with Jordan Mailata and company. So, to me it would be the offensive line, the offensive line, the offensive line. I thought, Brian Thomas, good player. They have some, weapons there, but until they get the offensive line solidified, none of that's going to matter.
We've been talking about different players at number 5. Oh, could it be the guy from Colorado? Could it be the defensive tackle? All this. But if you're going to build the offensive line, you got to just build it. No matter, at some point, you've got to start picking these guys early in drafts.
Yeah, and that's the Will Campbells of the world and the Banks from Texas. Yeah. Josh Simmons from Ohio State. I think some people will have him in that conversation. But get a building block up front. That's a great place to start. You could look at if there was a similarity to the Chargers. They had Herbert. Jacksonville has Lawrence. Harbaugh comes in. They take all, which was a pretty, you could kind of see that coming. And, Joe Alt should be a long-time player for them. And likewise, with Liam Cohen coming in, go get a foundational offensive lineman.
All right, give us an AFC South picture of front office stability right now. Let's go through the teams, if you will. Caserio and Houston, and what they've built down there seems to be pretty good.
Yeah, they hit a grand slam when you think about D'Amico Ryans. And, look, C.J. Stroud maybe took a little bit of a step back, but they should have tremendous stability between, Nick and D'Amico for years to come.
Indy, they got questions at quarterback, and Chris Ballard's been around here for a little bit now. What's the status in Indy?
Yeah, I think the big question is who's competing with Anthony Richardson. Are you bringing in Gardner Minshew, or are you trying to go out and get Matthew Stafford or Kirk Cousins? Because, the quarterback position, it doesn't develop in a straight line, but it's really important that, at the end of the day, they get winning quarterback play.
In Tennessee, a new world. Chad Brinker has the final say, according to the owner, and Mike Borgonzi there is the GM, and a couple layers there in Nashville.
Yeah, it all comes down to Will Levis, how well he plays. And I think if I'm, Tennessee, I'm the juxtaposition of Cam Ward, Shador Sanders against what Will Levis could be.
And then in Jacksonville, of course, we know the new world here. 33rd team's going pretty well. You guys were involved in the Jet search, huh?
Yeah, that was a great opportunity for us. Learned a lot, and hopefully, we helped them make some really good decisions.
Final thought with you here. Who will the Jaguars pick at number 5?
Yeah, I'll go back to, the best offensive lineman available. Maybe that's Will Campbell. Again, get a foundational offensive lineman. That'll make everything better.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate JP.
Mike Tannenbaum, front office insider with ESPN. From the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, JP Shadrick with Greg Cosell of NFL Films and NFL Matchup. Always a pleasure. I feel
JP, good seeing you.
The Combine's the place where we always get together.
I know.
Here.
I feel like the Super Bowl just happened yesterday.
Well, just wait until they move that back a week.
I know. God, yeah. I think the Super Bowl will be July 4th soon. right into the off-season or Memorial Day weekend, Yeah.
Amazing, right? A lot of change in Jacksonville. We've heard that before. It's happened a good bit over the last 15 years or so. But now the three-headed front office here. Liam Cohen, the head coach. James Gladstone, the GM. Tony Baselli is in there as the EVP.
I remember when I interviewed Tony Baselli and Marc Brunell as players years and years ago in Jacksonville. And Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardle and Jeff Lagerman.
Yeah, he still does radio for us.
Yeah. When I was there, Tony Baselli, I thought, it's obviously he didn't make the Hall of Fame, but I always thought that Tony Baselli, and I don't fancy myself an offensive line guru, but I thought he was the best left tackle that I'd seen, since Anthony Munoz. And it's just a shame that his career was cut short. He was, for a guy who was that big, it looked like his waist was like 31 inches. It was unbelievable. It still looks that way.
Well, it did for a while. And now it does again, but that's okay. Another story. Did you hear he blocked Bruce Smith in a game? We've heard that a lot.
You know what? I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've heard about that.
Right.
Every week.
See, the thing is, I've been around long enough to have actually seen that.
I remember.
Yeah.
Funny. All right, so let's get into Liam Cohen. And, we know how it all kind of went down, the process of the interviews. That's all in the rear view now. He's here.
Right.
His impact last year in Tampa Bay with that offense and Baker Mayfield. They had some injuries last year at receiver, and they started to run the football.
They did, and they ran it well.
So that helps, obviously, the quarterback a good bit. What stood out the most about their offense and Liam and what he put in there last year?
Well, it's funny you say the run game because, obviously, most people know that he cut his teeth a bit with the Rams. He actually was at Kentucky the year that Will Levis had a terrific season at Kentucky. But what struck me about the Bucs' run game last year was how multiple it was. Because, everybody assumes, hey, he was with the Rams, so it's the zone run game, the McVay run game. But I thought they did a really, really good job with the multiplicity of the run game and the way they got to base run. See, the main thing in the run game, there's not 1,000 run concepts. So it's really how you get to them. It's funny. I had this conversation with a coach this morning and I even asked him, I said, you hear people say so-and-so's a really good run game coach. Like, what does that mean? You're a defensive guy. What does that mean? And, he talked about how teams get to runs, formations, motions, misdirection looks, But then when the run happens, like I said, there's not 1,000 of them.
There's only a few holes there. You got to hit one of them.
Yeah,
right.
There's zone concepts, there's gap scheme concepts, there's duo. There's not so many concepts. So it's how you get to them. Do you use a lot of motion? Do you get to them in semi-unconventional ways? And I thought Liam Cohen did a really, really good job of that last year because the reality is Bucky Irving is 195 pounds. So, you have to find ways where you're not just running him up into the line of scrimmage. Right. So I just thought that, most people probably think of Liam Cohen pass game, Rams, McVay, what he did with Will Levis. I'm sure that's all been documented, in Jacksonville. But, the run game I found to be really fascinating.
And then Baker off the run game.
Yeah. There's, the play action element, which, I'm a believer, again, maybe it's my personal point of view, but I'm a believer in under center play action. And the reason I am is because it takes longer to get to the mesh point because what are you trying to do with play action? You're trying to cause indecision and conflict for players on defense that have both a run and a pass responsibility. So the longer that you can create that indecision and conflict, to me, is better. Whereas shotgun runs, I'm not saying you should never have a shotgun run game, but
it's just too early of a mesh.
It's so quick.
Yeah.
It's so quick.
Makes sense.
There's almost really no indecision and conflict that's presented to those players. So I'm a big believer in the under center, what I call the conventional play action pass game, and I think you'll see that.
Greg Cosell with us, NFL Films. Trevor Lawrence has 6 years left on his contract.
I wish I had 6 years left on my contract.
No kidding. Add me to the list, too. Everybody here, right? So he's here. He's going to be here. He's the center
he's the quarterback
of this team.
Yeah.
What stood out the most during the pre-draft process about him that you remember? Where has he met some of those criteria, and where has he lacked? And what's the future?
Well, I can remember the pre-draft process very well because it was not his fault that people started saying he's a generational player. I would never use that term about anybody that's never played in the NFL. That's not his fault. Was he
clearly the best quarterback of that draft, though?
I'm trying to remember who was in that draft.
It would have been – I'll have to look it up. Because we were just thinking about number one.
The point is there were a couple of things I thought that he needed to clearly work on when he got to the next level. He's a big, long kid, so he's a strider. okay?
Yeah.
And guys who are striders, I always think about how they're going to function in squeezed pockets, which you see far more of in the NFL than in college. I actually remember talking to a coach who was in the NFL at the time, he's not now, who had done, he was a quarterback coach, so he had done all the quarterbacks, and he had said that there was so much in the Clemson offense that was just not really NFL stuff, that it was hard in some ways to really get a feel for some of the things you knew he would have to do in the league. He didn't make many throws at Clemson where there were squeezed pockets. Now, I watched probably 10 games his last year, and I think I even watched some of his tape the year before, because I'm trying to find those plays. And because he's such a strider, there were times I thought that the few times that he did face squeezed pockets, that he would hurry himself because he's a strider. He's not the kind of guy.
Space.
He's not compact.
Yeah.
And he needs space.
Yeah.
So he would hurry himself, and that would lead to a little bit of inaccuracy, less than precise ball location. So I always thought that was something that I'd be very curious to see in the NFL. And I think he has a good arm, but I remember talking to a coach who coached him. He was on staff in Jacksonville, and he said, he's got a good arm, but he does not have a big arm. And I remember saying that a couple of years ago, and of course on social media people acted like I didn't know anything, and I felt like saying, yeah, a guy who coached him told me that. So I didn't say that, but I mean, that's how that goes. Yeah.
You can't win on Twitter.
No.
Man.
So I mean, he can. The other phrase I love, and which means nothing to me, is, well, he can make all the throws. Well, that's not necessarily true. I'm not saying this about Trevor, but people say that about guys. Did you ever notice they say that about guys who can't make all the throws? You never hear someone say Matthew Stafford can make all the throws.
Yeah.
Because Matthew Stafford can make all the. It's like not even a question.
It's just what it is.
Right. It is what it is. It's the guys that can't make all the throws.
Dan Marino can make all the throws.
Right.
Imagine that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the guys that have arms that are not quite there that people say, well, he can make all the throws. Well, no, he can't. Or you wouldn't have to say that.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Other quarterbacks in that draft class, by the way: Zach Wilson, Trey Lance,
right.
Justin Fields.
He was the best quarterback in the draft class.
Mac Jones.
Yeah, he was the best quarterback in the draft class.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there was a question. I mean, Zach Wilson probably had a stronger arm, but he wasn't as good a quarterback prospect overall.
Greg Cosell with us, NFL Films. Brian Thomas Jr., as the season went along.
Loved him.
They didn't throw him the football the first half of the season.
Well, it's funny because you know what I said in my evaluation of him? Yeah. I said, because obviously he played with Malik Neighbors, who was the bigger prospect. And obviously Malik Neighbors turned out to be very good as well. But I said that Brian Thomas would be an ascending player and he'd get better as he played in the league. So that's the way I felt watching his tape. And obviously it worked out that way. And he worked with T.J. Houshmandzadeh. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, got it, yeah.
And I know T.J. well, and we talked about him last year at the Combine. And T.J., who I respect greatly, obviously knows more about the receiver position than I do. He said to me, you watch Brian Thomas. I'm working with him. This kid's going to be special. So when he told me that, that even raised my belief that, this kid's going to be a really good pro quickly.
A lot of his touches came from Mac Jones at the end of the season.
Yeah,
He's got to get on the same page as Trevor.
Well, that's got an off season now for that with a new coach. I mean, that's the way it works.
This is going to be the third offense in the NFL for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and by the way, that's an issue, because every time you have to learn a new offense, it's like learning a new language. I mean, I've had coaches tell me that, you come in, a coach coaches you, he's teaching you French. If that coach gets fired, the next year you have to learn Spanish. Then if he gets fired, the next year you got to learn German. And, people just assume that stuff's easy because the concepts are not necessarily totally different. In some cases they're the same, but the presentation of them is totally different.
You got to establish. This is what they're establishing now.
Right.
All the coaches just now hired. They're having staff meetings here at the Combine to work.
Who's the OC?
Grant Udinski was with
the younger
Minnesota,
guy, right?
29. He's young, all right.
And I have no problem. I mean, well, let me put it this way. Who's the quarterback coach? Do you know?
Whipple. Spencer Whipple.
Was he the son of Mark Whipple?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
He might be young, too.
They are all young, Greg.
It'll be interesting to see how that works. We'll see how that all works out.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be fascinating to see. Let's go through the AFC South quarterback situations real quickly before we get out of here. And we know
there's only one that's really good.
Houston, right?
Yeah.
Jacksonville's not really good?
No, I mean of the other teams.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
You were saying the AFC.
Yeah, AFC
we
South.
just finished talking. I assume we finished talking Jacksonville. So when you said AFC South, I thought you meant Indy, Tennessee, and Houston.
Those are the teams in the South.
Yeah,
Let's start with Houston.
Yeah, they got a good quarterback. I think he went through a little bit of a learning process this year in figuring some things out, and I think he will figure it out. He had to play this year in his second year out of more squeezed pockets than he did as a rookie, and he started to play a little fast at times, and he missed some routine throws, which we never saw him miss as a rookie. So I think he went through a learning. That's the nature of the NFL. I mean, it's not easy. So, but he's a good player. He's not going to be a bad player.
Here in Indy, news this week that there's going to be a competition with Anthony Richardson. And, the competition so far has been Richardson. Is he going to be on the field or not? He's been banged up. He's been inconsistent when he's been out there. What's your feel on Richardson's future?
I'll answer it this way. I remember a number of years ago at a Super Bowl having a great conversation with Troy Aikman. And he said something that totally resonated with me, and I've said it many times through the years because it is 100% true. And that happens a lot. A coach or a player like Troy, who's obviously very smart, says something, and as soon as they say it, it's like, yeah, that's right. But they say it in a way where it just, resonates in your brain. I'm sure you've had that. It just resonates differently.
Yes.
And he said to me, you can do everything right as a quarterback, but if you can't throw it where you want to, you've got nothing. And unfortunately, Anthony Richardson can't really throw it where he wants to. And I'm not trying to be funny.
Well, no, he same thing at Florida.
He just can't really throw it where he wants to with enough consistency and regularity. And obviously he's got a running element, and the thought was that could help him as he grows into being a better quarterback, but he just misses too many throws. I mean, when you design plays and call plays and put it to game plan together, and you feel like, hey, we've got a really good approach against this defense. We've got really good route concepts against what we know we're going to face from such and such a defense, and your quarterback just misses routine throws, it's just too hard. And I don't know if that can be fixed. Maybe it can. I'm not a coach. I'm not with him every day. But right now, you'd see him. I think I've watched every game he's played in the league, and I think his last year at Florida, I watched 9 or 10 of his games, and he'll make some throws that are truly wow throws. You kind of go, oh my God, that's just a ridiculously good ball, and that happens once every 3 weeks, and it's just not good enough. I mean, and look. Shane, I'm not saying anything out of school here. Shane Steichen's pretty much said that. It's not good enough. That's why there's a quarterback competition.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
It's not good enough.
That's where they are.
Yeah.
That's where they are in Tennessee right now, too. Will Levis.
And I think it's kind of unspoken, but we all know that I don't think Brian Callahan thinks Levis is their answer. So they have the first pick in the draft. This is the beginning of the process. We'll see. Do they keep it? If they keep it, do they draft a quarterback? Do they trade it? And who knows? We don't know the answer to that. But I think they've made it kind of clear without, putting up a big sign that they prefer not Will Levis to be the starter week 1.
Final thought with you. Jaguars at number 5. Who's the pick?
Oh, I don't know who the pick is.
Come on, Greg.
Come on. We got to start walking through the roster.
Well, we got all day. We can stay here all day.
I think they probably would look at corner. I don't know where Travis Hunter gets drafted. And I like Travis Hunter as a corner. I don't think he's the level of prospect, for instance, of Patrick Surtain, but I think he's a good corner prospect. I'm trying to think of their roster.
Where are you on defensive tackles? Mason Graham. They need some girth in the middle.
I had this conversation with a scout the other morning. We had breakfast, and he's been a personnel director, college pro. He's been in the league 26 years. And we had a great conversation about Mason Graham because I like Mason Graham, but I don't love Mason Graham. And and you know me well enough to know I always have a reason. It doesn't mean, hey, right, I can be wrong, but I don't just say, oh, I don't like a guy. Yeah. There's a reason. Think about the best D tackles in the NFL. They all have a power element to their game.
No doubt.
Mason Graham does not have a higher level power element to his game. He's so much fun to watch because he's a movement guy. He's quick. He's explosive. He almost plays like a running back. But there's not a big-time power element to his game. Now, he's a young kid. I hear he's a great kid. I'm not going to sit here and say that in 3 years he's not going to be great. Yeah. But right now, I don't see that. And that just, I don't want to say it worries me, but, I just, all the great ones have power elements in their game.
I'm going to see you bull rush a guy.
Yeah, you got to be able to beat a guy there.
Yeah.
Not constantly work half a man and work around him and,
who's a good power player is Trayvon Walker. He's the one that goes there all the time.
I mean, think of guys in your division. Just think how country strong Jeffrey Simmons is.
Yeah.
I mean, he can just move people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. There's the answer.
Hey, so I have a reason. Maybe I'll be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. And believe me, if I'm wrong, I get told about it,
Uh-huh. You just go on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I love when people tell me, JP, that's an interesting take. I don't really do takes. I watch the tape. I work 75 hours a week watching tape. I don't really do takes.
I love it, man. Greg, you're the best.
All right, JP, thanks.
Thanks for the time.
All right.
Greg Cosell with us here at the Combine in Indy. JP Shadrick with Rhett Lewis of NFL Media.
Let's go.
It's been a day for you, but
it.
It's coming to a close. Thanks for stopping by.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Love to talk some Duval and see what's going on at pick number 5 and with the brand new power structure. I mean, there's so much to be excited about, man.
You said it right.
Yeah.
How about that? But
yes,
we got to work on it with him.
It's I think we understand that there's always room to grow.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is a new era, clearly. Three-pronged new era for the Jaguars. Tony Baselli, Gladstone, and, of course, Liam Cohen. So let's start with Gladstone.
Sure.
What do you know about this guy?
Other than the Rams absolutely adored him and that he really, kind of built his own path there. And I think that's to be commended in this world where a lot of people, land on third base and think they had a triple, right? And this feels like a guy who's obviously still, young in his journey, but, has been a rapid riser and I think has learned from some really savvy people in Los Angeles and has learned – in the last couple of years, probably what an impact just pounding the draft with big guys up front on the defensive side of the ball, what that could do for your fortunes, and winning with, day 2 and day 3 picks. And it doesn't have to all be about first rounders because, as you know, sometimes you got to F those picks.
That's what they did for a little while. And then, but you got to hit the other picks if you're going to do that.
And that's also
his job.
Did. Yeah,
he was scouting all those guys.
Exactly.
So now he's got his own job here. Now Liam Cohen. It's a good sign if you've gone to a place, left, and then get to go back to a place twice.
Yeah.
He did that at Kentucky. He did that in L.A.
Yeah.
And then, of course, had his own OC gig in Tampa and got Baker going.
Yeah.
So now Liam Cohen, a 39-year-old head coach. And, what was it about last season in Tampa? How did he turn Baker in that offense into what they were, and can he replicate something like that here?
Well, I think they got better running the football. They were not good running the football, and I think that obviously drafting and hitting on Bucky Irving was incredible and it kind of felt like it brought the best out of Rashad White at times too. So if I'm Travis Etienne, I probably feel pretty good about this about the way that run game. And look, I think Liam probably also saw the benefit of a young Studley offensive line and looking at the way that the Jaguars have tried to kind of fortify that group and whether you want to say couldn't get the most out of Cam Robinson, and now he's off in Minnesota, or and now can you find a way to retool that group, kind of in the way that Tampa had, right before Liam got there, and that was one of the best units in the league. So I think, continuing to fortify an offensive front, finding backs that fit the way that you want to run the football, committing to it. Look, it helps having a Hall of Famer in Mike Evans, so you're building that profile with Brian Thomas. And what BTJ did as a rookie, is extremely attractive to me now in Liam's system.
And think about with Brian, most of his looks were with Mac Jones throwing the football late in the season. That wasn't early. There was one game they threw it to him 3 times.
Right. And early on, it kind of mimicked what we saw with Marvin Harrison, out in Arizona. Like it had had some flashes, but couldn't consistently get that high level production. So I just really intrigued there with where they're at. I think, obviously anytime you get an offensive-minded head coach that comes in, makes you really intrigued what that first draft pick is going to look like. But again, bringing James Gladstone in also, kind of paints a picture of what he kind of came up into. And how they work together, and this was a lengthy process, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And so it did not, kind of just happen upon this lightly. So it feels like they're going to have a really solid bond and relationship on what each feels they need to get this team back to a consistent championship level.
And Gladstone was offered Friday, accepted Saturday, introduced Monday in Jacksonville.
Here we are,
and now we're Tuesday. He was here.
It was here again. Yes.
So it's one of those whirlwind moments. It certainly wasn't like the cleanest end to the season. Doug Peterson gets fired, and then they go through the first round, and then Balke gets run out. So now we are here. Welcome to the table.
Thank you, buddy.
Rhett Lewis with us. NFL media, and the Baselli part of this thing is intriguing too.
Oh yeah,
first ever draft pick in team history. He's been a contributor to the team, media side for the last 10, 12 years, but he had a lot of stuff going on outside the building too, and has to give it all up because this is a dream opportunity for Baselli to be part of this process. And how much of it we'll see as it goes, but hey, he's the EVP.
And look, I think this is the guy that's obviously built a life in football, and has been around when things were really good in Jacksonville, and knows what the potential of this franchise can be when it gets back to that spot. And then it's obviously seen it, as you mentioned, whether it was on, Westwood calling games or whether it was, when Tony was up there, in the booth or, has seen and stayed with trends that work in the league. And I think that's obviously really important too. When you're bringing back a legend, is it a figurehead or is it a guy who's actually still been connected to the game? And that's obviously what you got in Tony. So you just add in another kick-ass, football mind, like, let's go. It's like, that's I don't say this comparison lightly, but it's like you're Tom Brady almost, with the Raiders. Like, why would you not knock down the door and find out what Tony thinks about all these players, about all these opportunities in the same way that the Raiders are doing with Brady?
Feels a little bit like Elway back when
Elway
he
with
was
the Broncos, sure.
When that happened too.
Yep.
Almost a minister of culture. If we were in a communist country,
yeah.
that would be his title.
I like it.
Let's get to this draft now, and boy, the Jags are in the top 5 again.
Yep.
It's what it is. We know the needs, right? Defensive line, safety, corner, interior O-line. Are those stacked positions
this
draft? What stands out the most?
D-line certainly stands out the most. I imagine I'm not the first person to sit in this seat and say that. And I imagine I won't be the last, although maybe. But, I mean, that group, and that is a chance now for Jacksonville to get the best player at the deepest position group, position in the draft, and that's Mason Graham from Michigan.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard that name a million times. It would make a ton of sense to me. Again, you go back to the way, and look, I know they signed Eric Armstead, and you tried finding ways to get in, to bring that group up, and you draft obviously in Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, and so it feels like you spend a lot of resources there, right? But don't let that sway you from spending another big one on a guy who could, again, be another 10-year Pro Bowl type player. Look at what the Eagles do. We keep coming back to that as kind of the North Star of this draft process, considering they just, won their second Super Bowl in 5 years, and they kept hammering up front, right? Just kept hammering away, both on the offensive and defensive front, but specifically on the defensive side of the ball, both in the first round and then into even day 3 where they got Josh Sweat, right? So I think that is a formula that has proven time and time again to work in this league.
If Travis Hunter is there at 5, though, can you resist that?
Do the Jaguars view him as a defensive back or as a receiver? I think is a big question
there, right?
Because you just, again, you took a marquee player with a marquee resource at the receiver spot a year ago, and he turned out to be a pretty damn good player, Brian Thomas.
They traded back twice, twice to get to him. And they still got him.
And still ended up getting him. I think if you view him as a defensive back, it certainly fits because he will still help your offense. I think if you view him as a receiver, I find it harder to be a receiver and go spend some time on defense than to be a DB and spend some time on offense. So if they view him as a receiver like the Browns do at number 2, one, maybe he's not even on the board at this point, but I would, I guess, feel a little bit more comfortable at making him the pick if it's, all right, we're going to run him at DB, and then let's see what happens after that.
Yeah. I mean, you played college wide receiver.
Yes.
Can you believe what this guy's doing?
No.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'd get winded in a 60-play scrimmage, much less playing 125, snaps in an actual game. Right. So credit to him, incredible athlete. I think you worry about durability a little bit. He is a slender frame, but most dudes don't touch him. But again, you're going to have to get physical at corner, and so how do you hold up on that front in this league, I think is a question.
Let's finish up here with offensive line. And the Jaguars are pretty much set up at the tackles, seems like, at least for the short-term future. Left guard has a contract.
Yeah,
center and right guard are veteran guys who knows how long they're going to play, and 11th-year guys, Mitch Morse and Brandon Sheriff. So what about interior offensive line in this draft? What stands out the most there? Where would you begin?
Well, I think you're unless you pull the trigger at 5, I think you're going to miss on Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, who is probably the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. Booker from Alabama is a good player too at the guard spot. Zabel, though, is probably the best center in the draft. I think he can play anywhere and kind of helps you that way with his versatility. I think further on down the line, I'd look at a player like Jonah Monheim from USC. Has played all over the offensive line at USC, but really found a home at center. So I think that could be something day 2, maybe later on in day 2, that would make some sense there. I think he had a pretty good Senior Bowl.
That's the thing with this Jags team. They don't have developmental linemen right now, guys that are on the shelf waiting that they've been developing. So they need deep, later round guys to work on.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's hard. It's hard in this. This is not a developmental league. Like you
got to play. You better win now.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't get 6 years.
It's hard to do that. But I think Kelvin Banks could be. Mimbu from Missouri is a guy. Again, these are first round type of players. So. I think you'd be hard pressed there unless you're moving back, which could certainly happen. I just don't know. There's a ton of guys a ton of teams who want to move up in this draft. Everyone's talking about trading.
There's only 2 quarterbacks, right? Are they really worthy of moving
worthy
up?
Of moving up? What it would take to move up, or are you getting a bargain moving up this year because the class isn't quite what it was in recent years. So I think there's a lot to kind of consider on that front. But there are definitely interior offensive linemen in this group, and there's definitely some that you're going to be able to find beyond day 1.
Path to the draft. Let's
go.
The details.
March 31st, we're starting it up. We got a big first week. We're going to end week 1 with Shador Sanders' pro day from Colorado. So we'll have that in addition to a Path episode. We also have Cam Ward's pro day coming up before Path starts. So we got a lot of draft stuff hitting the airwaves here at NFL Media.
You're a trooper, man. Thanks for stopping by on a long day.
Anytime,
Appreciate
JP.
it.
Thank you, buddy.
JP Shadrick with Cynthia Frelund, NFL media analytics expert. That's not all you do, though. You have more roles than that. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Well.
I always forget, I should have you do my, voicemail outgoing message. You say my name perfectly.
We can do that.
I love that.
Anytime you want.
The problem is I don't want those random people who get your phone number to know it's actually me. So I have to keep the number one on there. Anyways, but I wish next time I get one where it's if I'll get a phone where no one knows.
That's what happens when you're a big star.
No,
you don't want.
No,
just in case.
No, it's randos who are hey, can you get me tickets to the Super Bowl? I'm like, nope, I don't get to. Are you kidding me? Sure, you know what? Let me do this for you.
Let me make a phone call, random person
that I haven't talked to since. Whatever,
Yeah.
So I just never changed my phone number. So, anyways,
they come out of the woodwork. I hear you. Another new world in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. 3-headed front office now.
Yep.
Head coach, GM, and an EVP in Tony Baselli. Is that the right approach? Is that too much? Is it too little? It's the approach they're going with.
I kind of feel given the fact that you have a nice blend of kind of in team building, you have a nice blend of established, newer, different thinkers, more legacy thinkers. So as long as they understand whose job is what and no one how do your Venn diagrams overlap, then who are we to say it's not perfect? Because I think you should have some the GM's not the oldest person in the world. Not, I don't think I'm saying something crazy here.
34.
Kind of a baby.
Yeah.
You know, young. Not 34 years of experience. Sometimes that, whatever. So my point is like it's nice to give him Tony Baselli, who understands all of the different logistical aspects that maybe he hasn't experienced. James Gladstone hasn't experienced yet in his career. So I like that part, and then let the coach do his thing because I kind of believe in that. Like work together and figure out who does what. But sure, I'm here for it. Like if they think it's gonna work, great. You got to give something to try. Like might as well shake it up. You know, like if it's not working, make it fit. Make it how you want it.
And Mr. Kahn's had all different types of setups for a front office. He's had a veteran GM and a veteran coach. He's had first-time head coach with an EVP. You know, and he's had all these different things. So
totally.
Now he's going on the younger end of that and give him an opportunity. So that's how it goes.
I mean, you have a guy on your staff that's from my high school, so it must be good.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean.
John Van Dam, baby.
They went to high school together?
Yeah.
Together. Same time.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Small world.
Small world. Yeah. It's his real name, too. People always like, is that his real name?
An actor.
Like, why would he change his name? If he's going to change it, he would be like John Claude Van Dam. But no, John Van Dam, he's awesome. Wonderful human being.
Looking forward to meeting him. That's for sure.
Yep.
Gladstone's experience is mostly in L.A. With the Rams. Worked his way up. He was scouting strategy. What do you know about their operation there with Les leading the way, Les Snead, the GM there, and what do you think he will be able to emulate from the Rams' experience?
There's two words that come to mind, like my word cloud with the LA experience and potentially what James Gladstone's going to bring. One is trust. They have a lot of trust in each other. Obviously, they didn't have first-round draft picks for a long time, and they rebuilt their defensive front without Aaron Donald.
They said F those picks, right? That's what they said.
They did say that.
Okay. But then you have the other picks you got to pick.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. F them picks. I was always like, okay. I'm pretty sure people would rather want to have whatever. Good for them. Make it make sense. And the other thing is system. And I think, obviously, in his presser you heard these, but I believe him. Like, I think that the system that he will be able to bring into place will be one that is at least a way to surface where things are not right quickly so you can address them, and it will help provide things, you know, in a way that makes sense and keeps making sense. So I think a system helps form an identity, and identity is really hard to keep over time, especially, you know, when you've had different people rotating through for a while, then it's hard to have an identity. So I believe that focus and that system and that structure creates a nice foundation to work from. That's where I think you will know what is a Jag, right? Like what are the traits that what is our mission statement? What are, you know, we always have at the combine here is like next is now or now, whatever it is. But the truth is somebody really puts a lot of time, effort, and thought into like all of these tag words that we have. Like, you know, I think I liked the one that was like make good decisions. Remember that one? Anyways, but it was like anyway, being great is your choice. It was being great is your choice, and I was like, sorry, you're telling to make a decision. Anyways, but people are really thoughtful about like, you know, galvanizing us around a topic, you know, and we're a lot of people. I mean, I was curious how many credentials or issues. There's like 1 billion, but like, you know, that whole thing that's how good teams are built.
That's why there's a minister of culture now, basically, in Baselli to kind of start that, and the GM on that part of it on the football side. And then there's Liam Cohen, a guy who went back to the college team he was at the first time, went back there, and then went back to the Rams again. That tells you he left both in good graces to be able to come back in both organizations. Then he goes to Tampa, and they had some injuries, but they worked around it and got the job done with Baker and everything. What stands out? What do you like the most about Liam Cohen?
It feels like Liam Cohen is able to take what a player does best and get the most out of them. And it's a lot of Baker has a really great arm, and a lot of people were trying to rely too hard on it back in his previous life. And then giving him some quick, easy tempo. They didn't really have a great run game to begin, you know, two seasons ago, and they figured it out even without that. So finding solutions to get someone in rhythm, get them in their flow, get them doing the things that they're – so then when he does take those deep passes to Mike Evans, everyone feels more confident. It's not about asking him to throw me a 35-yarder on every – no. It's about trying to figure out the right flow, tempo thing. Oh, okay, I see this defense great. I can recognize it, and I'm going to beat you over the top, whatever it is. Like, there's like a pretty good – I guess, about to be second-year receiver. I still feel like Brian Thomas Jr. is a rookie because it was like 5 minutes ago that he was a rookie.
He was here doing combine stuff a year.
Great.
It's like crazy.
Yeah, I'm like a huge fan of his.
And he got so much better as the season went on. They didn't throw him the ball the first half. He's getting like 3 looks a game.
I know. Well,
but it's just how it works.
I don't mind that they gave him a minute to like figure it out. Like in general, I don't mind that strategy. Yeah. But like, especially with figuring out like how to get chemistry with a new, like, I don't know, play calling with. Long story short is, I think there's going to be a great opportunity for him to, like, if I'm a fantasy player and I love the Jags, like, I'm telling all of my friends that I hate him and I'm not gonna draft. That I snatch him, round 1.
Love that. Cynthia Frelund with us, NFL media. Jags defense was among the worst in the league last year. They blew that whole staff out and brought in Campanile, and they've got first-round talent on the defensive line on the edges. They were a little soft in the middle. Linebacker play was inconsistent at times. They were rotating guys in, and then the safety play was far to be desired. So there's a lot of work to be done on defense. But there are some cornerstone guys, at least on the edges, you can build around here. Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker.
I think that this is a great time. So, number one, this is a better defensive class than it is offensive, in my opinion. I don't think it's a great O-line draft class. I don't think it's a great quarterback class. I don't think it's a great wide receiver class. I think that you're going to be able to get a nice corner. The Jags will be able to be like, great. Okay. Got me a corner.
Tyson Campbell on one side and whoever it is on the other.
Exactly. Okay. I'm not exactly sure which one because at some there are some we'll see after this week kind of where some of these chips fall when it comes to the corners. But I think this is a good time to need pieces on the defense. Like this is a weird free agency class in general. This is there's some weirdness this year that's just like not normal stuff that we're seeing. But I think defense is a good area to like if you need a wide receiver, life's gonna be rough. If you need a quarterback, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Right. So that's kind of I'm like better to need defense.
Okay. Let's get into some of the technology aspects of the football these days. There's the GPS stuff going on. Body scanning is starting to become where you can figure out weaknesses and all these things. And what's next? Like what's the cutting edge of technology in football these days coming up?
What I really like to see, and this doesn't have as much to do with the NFL as it does the college level, but now so we're in this like weird era of like NIL, transfer portals out of control.
The worst.
And the interesting part for me is I now believe if I'm any of these agents, I'm pushing on the colleges to start them on much better training regimens when they're younger. Like the variability between what happens between colleges is insanity.
Yeah.
And so I believe getting them on more regimented training programs earlier will help get rid of some of the problems we're seeing from all this different moving around business.
Yeah, but if the player's going to move in a year, how do you start a program for him?
Well, I think to me, and maybe I'm being political here, but I don't mean to be, they're employees and they need to sign a contract just like you and I are adults.
Sure,
are you an adult? If I can give you $3 million, you're an adult in my book. Like,
you're an
I
adult
understand.
for 3 years here at Ohio State at least.
And then people say like, well, if you're a math major, you can switch college. I'm like, yeah, I am paying to be the math major.
It's true. It's the other way around.
Right, like who's got the leverage here? Anyway, so I think that's gonna or agencies will start having to do that, something like that. Like, so I think the technology will trickle down better into the college programs because what we're seeing now is like there's just such a big the learning curve is so massive into the NFL. It's making it harder and harder for scouts to be able to accurately say like what is this person's resume, because if you're playing at 4 different places, like 8 games here, 8 games there, like I don't know what I'm looking at. Do you know? Like. Maybe scouts do, but I don't think they do.
What's your opinion on this idea of no chain gang next year? I hate it.
I think that
just to be quite blunt,
I don't think it's no, right? Because there's like so much like subjectivity when it comes to like where's the line to gain, like what. So if you have that mental reference, like I just don't think like my peripheral vision matters, right? So if I'm only saying like this Hawkeye is going to do that, I think it should help you in case when it's like really off, but there's some subjectivity into when forward progress was stopped.
Yes.
But I think your peripheral vision needs to have those orange markers so that you're more like you have to have a tether point, right? It's
Yeah.
like, like if I tell you to turn on the right like the red barn, like you need to have visual mapping to be able to. So I don't think that would help much. But I do think in certain cases having the ability to use the technology when something looks very wrong to double check it when it's not like game changing or something like that, that's helpful. But there's so much subjectivity. I don't think you can get rid of the mental reference points on the side.
I mean, the best thing I can probably compare this to is like in tennis, right? They
Yep.
do the review of the in
Yep.
and out,
Yep.
and it's the whole thing. They clap. There's the drama. Okay, but I love the drama of the old guys bringing the chains out
And the card.
and stretching it and
And putting it-
Steratore doing the
yes.
card. Like, I love that.
I like
great
that.
TV.
It is great TV. I'm with you on that. But there's always going to be subjectivity. Like I don't want it to not be like to me the challenge. The only time I want to use a technology is when it looks like it's like 4 inches different. 3. You know what I'm saying? Like where you're like that is clearly a first down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. I don't know.
Well, then you got to figure out the spotting more than the measurement.
Correct.
Like,
but
that's
I
another
think you
argument.
need those. I think you need the what is it like temporal reference? Whatever you need that like.
I don't even know what you're talking about right
Like
now.
you need to
You're
see the
so
orange
far
over
advanced.
there. But I think you mentally need to see like the orange over there.
Oh yeah, I think that's still going to stay. You still have to know where to go, or where you got to get.
I think
to.
it's got, but I think they're gonna. I want the drama too.
I do too. Final thoughts with you here. Favorite part of the combine week?
Getting to see everyone.
Yeah.
This is my favorite week. Everyone thinks they can win the Super Bowl, which who am I to say they can't?
I
you
know a
what?
few teams that can't, but
We
not
won't talk
including
about
the
them.
Jags can, but
Of course.
other teams.
Have you seen your division? Of course.
I'm aware of the division.
All you need to do is make it to the playoffs to win the Super Bowl.
That's what they said last year. Didn't make the playoffs. 4-13.
Well, all you can go is up.
Oh, you can get worse. It can always
I'm
get
a Lions
worse.
fan, I know.
We've had, yeah, it's a team that had back-to-back number 1 picks. Jaguars at 5. Who are they picking?
Who do I want them to pick?
Who are they picking?
Who's available?
See, nobody has just a straight answer anymore. Everybody's got all these, variables.
I might be in the minority. I think the Michigan corner would be a really good pick for you guys. I think it'd be a really nice fit. I think that in your division it would be a really solid. But people like, he's not worth that high of a pick. I don't give a crap. If he's going to really help your team, I'll just take him there. Or you can try to trade down and get extra equity for it. But I don't know. I like the Michigan corner a lot for you guys. Maybe
Love it.
Does that not make you happy?
No, it makes me. It's
Okay.
your opinion.
I'm going to tell you, though, if Will Campbell's there still from LSU, it'd be really hard. That's like the one offensive tackle that I really like.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be there still, which is why I went with the corner. But if LSU offensive tackle is there, please do not let him not fall. I mean, that's like truly the only one that I actually think I could say I feel is very strongly as a starter day one and like contributor. In this class, O-line's crazy. But then after that, I would say Michigan corner.
Love it. Cynthia, enjoy your work.
Yeah,
Thanks
you.
for coming on with us.
Anytime. Tell Bucky. April 1st, him and I. Path to the draft.
Oh, yeah. Path to the draft.
Mm-hmm. And then you know what? We do it after that, but it's still called Path to the Draft. No one knows why that happens.
Even though the draft is over?
Mm-hmm.
Path to the next draft? Or reviewing the path that we just took to the draft?
I don't really know.
As long as the check clears, Cynthia,
That's right.
don't ask questions.
That's way above my pay grade,
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Cynthia Frelund, NFL Media here at the Combine.